Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement. Good day again, St. Lucia. Welcome to the program, Agriculture on the Move. My name, Philip Sidney, your host. Today we're discussing rodents or rodent control in agriculture. Simply means rats affecting our crops, simply as it is. But to my right is Mr. Christopher Lubin, who is the owner and managing director of FDL Pest Control Solutions, and of course next to him is Mr. Cletus Alexander, who's the crop protection officer attached to the Ministry of Agriculture. Gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
Chris Boy, of course, you're not new to this area here, but let us, St. Lucia, know who is Chris Lubin. Give us a little background.
Okay, I am Christopher Lubin, an agronomist by profession. I started working in the agricultural sector at Winban in 1985, where I worked with the plant pathologists and subsequently with both the plant pathologists and nematologists. My work involved working with pesticides, nematicides, fungicides in controlling Sigatoka disease and also nematodes and other pests in bananas. I was lucky to, whilst working at Winland for 10 years, go off to do my first degree at the University of the West Indies, where I studied agronomy, of course. And because of my performance, I got an opportunity to start an MPhil/PhD with a European funded project. However, I lost all my research to Tropical Storm Debbie, right? And the funds ran out. So I basically moved on, where I worked with Rowan Poulenc, which is now Bayer Crop Science, where I worked as an individual who developed pesticides between Latin America and the Caribbean with that company, and subsequently Renick Incorporated, which is a company that was based in Puerto Rico, where I worked as the product development and marketing manager. And after that, I came back to St. Lucia and I formed FDL Pest Control Solutions because I worked with companies across the Caribbean, Latin America in pest management. Working out of Puerto Rico, I worked both with agriculture, public health, urban pest management, and I had done a fair amount of work. So I went off to study pest management, both US and Europe. And I've kept up in touch with that, and I've done a fair amount of work with rodenticide companies and other pest management or manufacturers of pesticides based on my research background to develop them in the region.
Okay, great. Well, a wealth of knowledge, eh? Of course, Cletus, I mean, everybody knows St. Lucia. Cletus has been with us in the ministry for a while. Of course, right now, I think it's Dr. Alexander now, PhD. Rodents have been around for many, many, many moons. We know the effect it has on crops as far as farmers are concerned. From an economic standpoint, it has set them back a lot. We have tried rodenticides over the years, and the rats are still around, you know. So please tell us what's happening now. I'm hearing new things are happening in your collaboration with Chris. So give us a little background.
As I said, rodents, they have been with us for a while. But in terms of agricultural production, they cause it is estimated that between 2 to 10% of some crops is lost due to rodents. Again, they are major vectors for some zoonotic diseases. Rodents, they can affect the crop before harvesting, and they can affect the crop after harvesting. They can, at planting, they can go and they can eat the seeds that you planted, and they can cause a lot of problems in terms of the post-harvest. It has been an issue in terms of the agricultural production in St. Lucia. Basically, the farmers have depended a lot on nematicides. But yes, you have had some level of control, but you need something that is more sustainable. On a yearly basis, thousands of dollars of nematicides are imported into the country. Based on that, are you seeing that if you have to do some research in terms of the amount that is imported and control of the pest, is it warrant further investment in nematicide? Is there a dire need for transition to something that is more environmentally friendly? Because again, you will use the rodenticide and it can basically contaminate the crop as well. Also, you'll kill some of the rats out in the field, and again that can be an issue for in terms of the safety of the crop. So hence the reason for us now doing some trial in terms of something that is more environmentally friendly. Some fertility control for rodents. Basically something like a contraceptive in human being where you try and control the fertility of the male and the female so that you can have an impact in terms of the population. But there are limitations in terms of the use of the fertility products. It has to be sustained because once you stop, it means they will get back fertile again. So
multiply faster.
Mr. Lubin and I, we collaborated on some research in the Roseau area. So I think he is quite versed in the area and is going to expound more on what we did during this trial.
Great.
Well, going back to Rosa was nostalgic. That's what I started off as.
You're home.
Yes. But I worked with two rodenticide producing companies, one with the fertility product and one with an anticoagulant. But I want to start by saying we should try to change from speaking about rodent control to rodent pest management. Because if we think like that, we need to understand the biology of the rat and its food preferences, and also the way the pesticide or the rodenticide works. So we looked at the birth control product, we looked at an acute poison, and we also looked at two what we call anticoagulant rodenticides. And if I can just go into that a little bit.
Yes, definitely.
Rodents, scent, taste is very important to rats. So rats are omnivores, like us, all right? And there's synanthropic, which means that they benefit like cockroaches, ants, and other insects. They benefit from man in the sense that what we eat, they eat, and what we do, they take advantage of it. So the two most important factors would be, in the case of a farmer, I'd say the most important factor is sanitation, because when you go on farms, there's some indiscriminate use of food.
Right.
That's one, but also what they're growing is food. And if a rat is raised in that area eating a particular kind of food from its mother's womb, it's very conscious of what to eat. And rats now smell each other's mouth, okay? Carbon disulfide is a smell that comes out of rats' mouth or rodents' mouth, and that's very important to the young.
Yes.
Okay, they smell. Yes, they smell, and they're very good at using that to eat. Because although they're omnivores, there are risks outside there. So rats, if they eat the wrong thing, they'll die. So they've learned to use cues. And there are three things that we can look at. One, I mentioned, it's that they look at the others. Another one is picker. If they eat food and you're not too sure, picker is practiced by some mammals. They eat dirt, and the clay in it will help it stick and get out. But then, because rats cannot vomit, they can't vomit. They have a very strong, the valve between the stomach and the esophagus is strong. So unlike us who use our diaphragm individually, the two muscles, and we can force this open, rats can't do that. So because of that, they would have to find a way to survive. And making sure they understand food based on taste, smell is very important. And also urine. Rats pee a lot on different things. So in the case of female, estrogen, progesterone is important. The female rat who's about to go into heat would pee everywhere for the stronger male to come, right? So they'll do it. In some cases, the younger rats that are not even there yet would pee on the stronger males, so therefore they remember who to go by, you know? So it's science that have already been studied, right?
Yes.
So when we looked at the area, farmers were complaining about sweet potatoes, corn, melons.
Pumpkin as well.
And pumpkin. So the intention was to look at palatability. How would the rats react to this? So if I go back, based on our age in this room here, if we go back, farmers before used a product called phospho in cocoa. And what they were doing was creating what's called bait shiners. The rat ate it, Some would die, some wouldn't die. But those that didn't die would remember what they ate and would not eat it for at least 3 months. So that concept was very interesting to me in terms of trying to look at the crop, because the farmers are saying, okay, I'm buying how much rodenticide, like Cletus alluded to, and I'm still seeing the thing. So what I found out was a lot of them use pellets, and pellets are designed for indoor use, not outdoor use. As experts, we know how to use it in the field, but the farmer doesn't. So he was basically throwing money away. And then we looked at the liquid, which is not for general use. So what we did was first put out the pesticides, the rodenticides, where we tainted food with liquid rodenticide. We used the normal rodenticide, but the two of them, one had more wax than the other. And when we got two things, we got uptake with the rodenticide and we got bait shyness with the food, we then put the palatable, that we put the sausage base, which is the birth control, and we got very good uptake on it. Now it's a long-term trial. The key here was to see palatability. The farmers were very pleased because they saw the uptake. And we were able to prove that we can prevent a rat from eating watermelon. Okay? Like the old people would say, they would think that, you know, watermelon, you eat mal, you know, and they wouldn't eat it. We were able to prevent them from eating pumpkin and eat what we wanted them to eat. And so the uptake was great.
Based on that, I mean, in layman's terms, how can that happen?
That's a good point. In layman's terms, a farmer should not just think of, I'm growing a crop so I can sell and make money. He has to think of it. Remember I said pest management. Okay. So we have two kinds of rats in St. Lucia. The roof rat seems to be the one that's affecting them the most, because they would say to me, we saw them pass on the branches of the, you know, the trees or on the fronds of the coconut trees, and we can see them moving. Right. So let's go backwards. Before people use that metal strip on coconut trees, that's one factor that's very important, right? Even other trees if they have to. Two is know which rat. And we can tell it by looking at the droppings of the rat, and also if we see them, because the roof rat has a much longer tail, bigger ears, it's a slender rat. It's a nicer looking rat compared to the Norway rat, which we see all around the place, right? So it's important to know which rat is affecting you.
So the rats in Castries,
these are the Norway rats. In 2004, we did some work there, It was very interesting. They're all over. But these are the Norway rats, which are bulkier, stockier, heavier. And they tend, both rats don't always agree, but we've seen places where they coexist. Okay. So the important thing here is, so the farmer needs to understand, if I'm going to grow potatoes, I can impact the rat before I start my crop. Not when the crop is growing, because the rats are there. And like when farmers, when they, remember I spoke about sanitation, when they leave whatever in the field, there's stuff there, they need to clean that out, but also they can use it to prevent rats from eating their crop. Okay? And to Cletus's point, the birth control can come in after, because it's a long-term strategy. So you can keep that population of rodents down. And you now need to look at, the other thing that was interesting is we use rodent bait stations. And it's a monitoring device. So I can always come and say, okay, yes, they took it. Because farmers generally buy the rodenticide and throw them out. And the rodenticide disappears, but it does not mean the rat ate it. So with the unit we have, we can actually see that they gnawed on it, and we keep on replacing. So rodent pest management, if I put bait and I come back and there's no bait left, I did not put enough. I must always come back and see some bait left, because if it means the rats came in, they ate everything, and they went away. Now a farmer is always on his field, so he can be trained to do that, right? But I'm happy with what I saw, and a lot more work has to be done. But we can, from what I'm seeing and with some of the people that have interacted with Cletus, farmers can be trained to understand their field and understand what to do to reduce damage.
So what happens to a farmer next door who does not carry out that control? Will it come back and affect the stations where you beaten in that particular farmers? Say farmer number one, you're working with him, but farmer number two doesn't do anything. What happens?
I remember, go ahead.
Again, what he is saying is very important. With the control, whereby if there's an urgent situation in humans, the use of the toxic pesticide is important, because you will knock down the population. But with the fertility control now, what you'll have is that, yes, they'll be sterile, but they're going to live as well. you're depending on natural mortality to bring down the population.
Right.
So with the nematicide, it's really much quicker than. And what you may have is that even if you control the population on some of the farms that you conduct in the research on, you'll have immigrants. Those neighboring areas, you'll have the farm.
Yes.
Since there's a void now, they'll
They'll
come
come in.
into the area where they can chip
And then they will get
the population will
will
suffer.
suffer.
Hence the reason why you need continuous baiting with the fertility, so that they can, because not only the parents that you're looking at fertility for, you're looking at all the offsprings as well.
Yes.
So fertility will be continuous.
Okay.
And remember, I indicated that they have a food preference.
Right.
So if you put the two things together, you're basically saying, I'm trying to get them to not want to eat food in this farm, but it doesn't mean that others would not eat from the other farm. So there is need for that structure in terms of how it should be done. And it comes back to research. We in the wind band days, a lot of research was done in bananas, but a lot of work is done now, but there's no set research in these areas. And I think farmers can be trained, because the farmers we work with were initially a bit skeptical, but when they saw the results, they were, yes, it's gone. And we were actually be able to prevent rats from eating corn, prevent them from eating, and go for the
Watermelon.
yeah, and go for the birth control. And it looks like a sausage, so I guess it's something that's palatable enough for them. And rats initially don't, if there's something new, they don't eat it up front. Remember I said
Yes.
so they would taste it. And if they now realize, oh shucks, this thing got me sick,
Then
they will leave messages for others not to eat it.
Yes.
And so it's important. And in that case, they ate all. They ate all of it. So it's palatable. So there is some interesting.
So how many farmers you all worked with in that?
We worked with 4 farmers, 1 corn, watermelons, pumpkin. There's 3 farmers. Three farmers.
Three
Yes,
farmers. Okay.
But-
But I know there is a lot of rats when it comes to cocoa production. So are you all hoping to?
Well, if there are opportunities there, yes, because rodents can be controlled. Okay, we just need to take time to understand it. So rats don't see too well. People need to first understand that.
They don't
Rats
see too well?
don't see too well.
Yeah.
Rats feel. So they have special hairs on their bodies called vibrissae, the whiskers. So a rat runs, the whiskers come for. You never see a rat run into a wall because it's aware of its surroundings. And they will mark, like I said, they will mark with their urine. So if something was moved, they would mark it to know, hey, that was there, it wasn't there. So they work with that. So if it's a roof rat, we first have to establish whether it's a roof rat or whether it's Norway rats affecting them.
Okay.
And if it's Norway rats, they burrow in. The wrong roof rats are in the trees. And they leave, because they don't see too well and they leave those rub marks. So the sebaceous glands, what we call ring around the collar, they produce that. And they mark the areas they go through heavily, so we would see that. And we can train people to understand what's fresh and what's stale. So it's important to know the habits of the rat. Again, I come back to pest management, not pest control. Because if not, you're doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result, and it's not going to happen.
Okay. There's of course we know about the rat urine and leptospirosis.
Yes.
Okay. How can that be controlled in terms of? Would you think there'll be less leptospirosis using that method down the road with less rats around?
I would say in the farming areas you'd have less rodents and less chance of that happening.
Okay.
Okay, so the key thing is monitoring systems.
All right.
And a rodent bait station makes a difference, not throwing the bait around, because in a farm it's out, it's in the open. The rodenticide is not going to last forever.
Right.
So it's important to put it in an area. If we find the runway of the rat, you don't put stuff in the runway because they know that wasn't there. So you have to now trick them into finding it. Okay, so you have to look at home and food. And remember, they have a preference already. So what you put in, you just add into the menu.
Right.
So it's important to understand how.
So you have to
how it's done.
understand the MO of the rat.
Yes, exactly. You have to think like a rat.
But we seem to be focusing a lot on rats, but mice as well.
Oh yes.
So it's rat and the mice.
The mice, yeah.
So for us, it is very important creating what is called the bit shyness. Because if you have a watermelon crop, you should not wait when the rats start eating your watermelon. That's
for control.
Yes.
You do the baiting.
Yeah.
But what you can do is, if you know your watermelon will be ready for probably in a couple of weeks, what you can do is you can purchase a watermelon, put the watermelon in the bait station, apply the liquid nematicide, and the bit shyness will disappear. Because you'll go back and tell the others that I ate this thing in the farm, and then the population, I'm going to die, and so on. So definitely, that is very important. Creating the bait shyness, whereby if you have a pumpkin as well with the pumpkin farmer, in the bait station, we put the pumpkin under liquid nematicide. So,
well, you keep saying nematicide.
not nematicide, sorry,
Rodenticide.
the rodenticide. So it was very interesting to, again, the farmers, they were very receptive to the research, and we're looking to probably scale up. If we can get other regions where we can transfer the technologies to the other regions where crops are being cultivated.
So how long this thing has, you did this?
I did it for 3 weeks. We did it for 3 weeks just to understand the palatability, but also in that time we inspected. We were on the farms at least twice a week. Okay, sometimes every other day. We just wanted to make sure that, like I mentioned earlier, if we put rodenticide in the bait station, it should not run out.
Right.
So we had to go as frequently as we possibly could. Farmers also have to be trained. You have your farm, your shed. The way you eat and what you do inside there is important.
That's true,
okay,
that's true.
so that's the sanitation part again. You know, so it's not just one thing. Okay, we can put rodenticide till we get blue in the face if we don't understand the why we fail. So the food is what we want to protect. You create bait shyness, you use the product, you reduce the population, and it's not only in rodents you now have this happening. It happens with birds. You know, there are things that can be used. So it's a range of activities that should be done on a farm, and the farmer has to pay attention to it, because if not, he will always have issues. Right? And he can be trained to see the runways of the rat, to look at where they come from, and they know it, they see it. It's just to understand how to use what they have to control.
So, okay, so you all worked in Roseau.
Yes.
Okay, so where else will that be replicated?
We're looking at Region 5. That's in the Vifort area. Also, we did it on the watermelons, the pumpkins, and the corn farmer. Very important to us will be having a trial with a sweet potato farmer. Yes. Because we know there's a serious issue in terms of the rat infestation in sweet potatoes. So once you can get a sweet potato farmer who is interested, we can transfer the technology to whatever region that we feel that we can have the trial on.
What was interesting to me is the potato farmers say to you, there are still potatoes in the field after harvest. So there might be small potatoes or pieces they are left in the field, and that's the source of food. Some of them might start to grow because they didn't till the land. Because we actually went back when that process started, so we didn't just come and we went back to look at it. So the lands were being prepared. So that's when you now would disturb the potatoes, right? But in some cases, if you look at it from a practical perspective, some of them might already be growing, and now you're digging it up. And remember, rodents use smell. So if they sense that, they can be coming back from that early, and then you plant your crop, and they now know, hey, I have a source of food. So it's important that habits change. Some of the practices have to be adjusted, and we can have good success.
Okay, so at what points will that rodenticide be available to the public for purchasers, I'm sure?
Yeah, but this is something that the ministry would have to decide. We wouldn't, because it's something that requires proper training to use.
Okay.
It's dangerous stuff. You know, no pesticide is safe, and you want to make sure it's used the right way. And I say that simply because over the years, what we've learned is farmers or people use different products as rodenticides. Furadan, for example, was one of the main ones that was used for years, and farmers mix stuff, even down to using the cans where they cook it and then they tint the food. So I think it's important for people to understand the why, the how, what you do, and it's important to document it. That way people are aware and the training is taken seriously. If not, we will start something, and then if it's not done properly, people will see it as a failure.
Okay.
And we need to make sure people understand what's being done, why it's being done.
Okay. Yes. So there have to be that collaborative situation with the Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that it works.
Yes.
So, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. You said when would the nematicide, rodenticide, be available on the market? Firstly, it has to be evaluated by the Pesticide and Toxic Chemical Control Board. Because if a new product is coming into the country, we'll need to do the necessary risk assessments
Right.
to mitigate some of the impacts of the product. So once this is done, the product can be taken to the board for registration.
Okay. So right now it's just
A trial.
A trial.
tested trials
Yes.
around the island. And like I said again, so you do have a specific time frame before it gets to the board for approval?
It's difficult to put a time frame because if a registrant submit a dossier, it means, well, after reviewing this particular dossier, you may ask for further information. Where was it tested? Where was it tested? While going through the dossier, you may see something where you see some impact, some hazard on the dossier. The registrant will need to prove to you that some of the persons, or where it was some of the risks that he's presenting, where it was mitigated, some of the research papers that was done on this particular product. So all these important pieces of information, they're very important in terms of the registration of the product to mitigate the risk associated with the product.
So there's no time frame.
There's no time frame there.
But still there is opportunity to train farmers until that time,
time
to
comes.
understand what they should and shouldn't do.
Okay.
Yes,
Great.
because it's not going to happen overnight. But my observations, because in our industry we are observational biologists, my observations are people want a quick fix, but you're dealing with a pest that has been around for a very long time. And being synanthropic, it's adjusted its lifestyle to us. So we need to readjust. And it will not happen with just a pesticide.
Right,
it has to happen with an attitudinal change towards understanding, I have my crop, I want to make sure I save, I have maximum yield and less damage. What do I need to do? And years ago, we've been training with farmers where, for example, using misting, for cicatoga control, things like that. You have to train. People need to understand wind direction in that case, how to move through the crop. It's no different in this case. It's to understand how I should use a rodenticide. And if I understand that and I see the results, I believe. If I don't see the results,
then of course we continue.
I don't, yes.
Again, what's very important for us is that the farmers, they've been really reliant on pesticide use. And the use of pesticide is not the only means of controlling rodents. So there are other technologies available for controlling rodents, like what we try and presently, the fertility control, the use of carbon monoxide, and probably the blocking of the burrows, and so on. There are lots of other measures available. But specifically, we feel that the use of the fertility product is going to, again, the product is an organic product.
Oh, yes, that's another thing.
In terms of environmental protection and food safety, it will help in that regard.
Final word, Mr.
I hope it catches on. I love research. That's what I was. As professionally, that's where my profession started.
Definitely.
And I think urban pest management in agriculture, it's very important to understand the why and the how. We should not just be applying stuff for applying its sake.
Correct.
And I think it's important for all involved to take it seriously for an end result.
Again, for me, it has to be food security.
Great.
The Ministry of Agriculture, we've been talking about food security for a very long time. And if we are able to control the rodents in watermelons, in the cantaloupes, in the pumpkins, in sweet potato, there can be at least a 10% increase in those crops.
Definitely.
Which can benefit.
More money in farmers' pocket.
Yes.
Gentlemen, thank you for being here. I wish you all success, and I'm sure that once you all are on track with what you do, we will get there. Thank you again.
Thank you.
You've been watching Agriculture on the Move. We want to thank you for viewing the program. We always want to tell you, remember, agriculture is our business, and we need to eat fresh. St. Lucia's best. Because once you can control the rodents, obviously we'll have an increase in production. Thank you again for viewing. I'm Philip Sidney saying goodbye and see you again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole mouvement.
Agriculture on the move.
Agricole en mouvement.